it's your first time of joining us, we just have informal chats with some inspirational ladies. We just have chats about um, important topics with the hope to get inspired, learn something new, and be encouraged in your faith walk. So today, episode 5, we'll be exploring frontline and faith, and we'll be looking at the stories of three ladies who are currently working on the front line of the healthcare service, NHS, in the UK. I think I'll start with Maureen. Maureen, maybe you could say hello so everybody sees
Hello.
you.
Hi.
Okay, yeah. So, and maybe Njide, you say hello too, so everybody sees you. So that as I go along and I call the names, everybody knows.
Hello.
And
Hello,
Jemimah, you say
Njide.
hello too.
Hello.
Right. Okay. So I'll start with you, Maureen. Um, so Maureen works as a radiographer in a hospital in Manchester. And so I've invited Maureen to come on and just share her experience of what has, been her own journey since the start of this whole COVID pandemic and how it has affected her, the way she delivers her own health service and how it's impacted on her faith. So Maureen, let me let you share a bit more.
Thank you, Foma, for letting me in on the Zoom and making me to share my experience. I work as a radiographer, so more or less on the front line. COVID-19, as we all know, affects the respiratory system. And so every single person that comes into the hospital comes to us for x-ray, chest x-ray precisely, before going for any other further diagnosis. The chest x-ray gives you about 43%. If it's there, you will know. But the CT scan gives you like 80 to 90% of being certain that this person is positive. Meanwhile, my own story, where the very first patient I x-rayed that was positive, without knowing, clicked the alarm bells. I did the x-ray of this patient on a Monday, and I was on work on Tuesday night. Following Wednesday morning, one of the general directors came around and said, Maureen, can you tell me your staffs who was on so date? And I'm like, why? And he said, there's a patient that is positive. It was the very first patient that was x-rayed and that was positive in the hospital. So I was like, okay, what's the name of this patient? So I checked through and I find out that I have also x-rayed this patient alongside other colleagues. And so immediately said, oh, in that case, you have to leave immediately and go home and isolate for 14 days. And my heart started pumping. I was like, what? Meanwhile, because it was the very first patient, so we weren't given any PPEs. We had nothing covering our nose and nothing whatsoever. And this patient has been intubated. When I went to ICU to x-ray him in a mobile machine. So it was so dicey. At that point, I was really shaking in my feet. I'm like, oh, have I got it or not? But then there's this assurance that God, you will not let me go like that. Even though the fear was there, I keep holding on to God. A lot of friends came along trying to help when I told them about it. So my main inspiration was from Psalm 91. That really helped me. To be sincere, that was my mainstay, like 91. You are my portion, no matter what comes way. 91 was like a stronghold, something I could resort to. I could go back to, like, God, this is your word, and I stand by it. I was on my line of duty, but this is it. I think when you are so open and playing with God, He knows where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Even though the fear was there, but with the word of God right in front of you and you're holding on to faith, it kind of take the anxiety and the fear away. So within my 14 days of isolated, there are lots of different thoughts. But because I decided to resort to God in various ways, clicking to the Word of God, because nothing comes to mind than to like go back to God, the basis, God who knew all from beginning to the end.
Mm.
I couldn't tell some friends because they probably be thinking something else. So I knew the friends I have to pick and choose and tell who I know
Mm.
that can stand with in faith with me. And
Mm.
beside the spiritual aspect of it, that I have to hold on to God, study the word, and keep claiming the promises of God, I still have to take the physical things that you have to do your part while God is working on your case.
Mm.
So I did go beyond the limits of. I couldn't take garlic before now, but when that happened, garlic, ginger,
Oh my.
and all the mix up. I have to like mix them. I like close my eye and take it, swallow it as often as I could.
Mm.
And that really worked for me. Even though I was having some kind of like symptom trying to cough, I'm like, what is that? you know. But taking those and then holding on to God prayerfully and with the support of other believers that knew about it, praying for me, I
Mm.
overcame. So on the 10th day, they called me back to work. So, oh, since you're not having any symptoms, you have to come back to work. Without testing and anything, I'm like, I need to stay 14 days to be sure that I'm free. Then back on the 10th day and started work. And another thing that encouraged me was while I was in isolation, I had my fellowship group of people that they bought things because I told the leader. And so one of them among the fellowship group goes out there to buy things for me and drop on the doorway, and she will jump into her car, drive far away, and they say, Maureen, hello. I'm like, oh my God. So nobody wants to come close to you. So that kind of anxiety there is also there as well. But I was so blessed that she was able to do that because I needed some few things, but there was nobody to get them for me. If not for the fellowship group, I'll
Mm.
probably be stuck at home or buy some internet deliveries, which sometimes they deliver wrongly and you don't
Mm.
have what you want. I was so pleased. But another thing that actually shook my faith as well was the fellowship leader that I mentioned to. I was sent home because of COVID-19 first experience. He felt sick. I didn't know whether it was the same period, but eventually, when I resumed work, he was brought to the hospital and I personally x-rayed him. When he came in, I'm like, Martin. He was like, oh, is that Maureen? He couldn't open his eyes. He was really struggling to breathe. I said, yeah, because he recognized my voice. This is somebody we eat, we go to his house, we fellowship, and he came in. I x-rayed him. I could tell that there was something there, not so obvious, but he was
Mm.
into one of the wards. So 3 days later, I went there to visit him. He was really struggling, and he was trying to explain to me that they won't give him ventilator because he has underlying problems. And so they left him there struggling all the while. And the following day, I think within a week of him getting to the hospital, he passed on.
Oh dear.
And that really, really shook my faith. I'm like, God, why? I went to pray for him. We always pray for him, fasting. A lot of people praying for this guy.
Mm.
I don't know, but that really, like, really shook me. And I have to, like, really withdraw a little bit and meditate. God, what is all this about? Is that your plan for this man? Is that your plan for your children? I mean, we prayed and we believed that he was going to come back to us, but he passed on. So in all of it, we do know all things work together for those that believe God and trust in him. So God knows the best. While we're trusting God, we also have to do our part and
Mm.
do what you can to keep safe physically as well, do exercises and keep faith. So
Yeah.
yeah, we
Oh.
can be safe. Yeah, that's my little story. I'm still going back to work. I'm strong. I hate it. I'm thankful to God that I overcome that. But now it's like the fear that I had in the beginning was is no longer there. Why? Because I trusted God and I've been in the front line all this while, and God has been protecting me.
Okay.
Yeah,
And how has, the COVID-19 situation affected the way you now, are able to work? Do you have to dress up with the PPEs, or has it affected, how you deliver your own service?
certainly yes, because that proved to me that it could have been worse. Thankfully, I'm also one of the representatives for Society of Radiographers. So when there was shortage of PPE and they wanted us to work despite that we don't have enough, I stood
Mm,
my ground and told everybody this is not going to work.
mm,
And if there was anything contrary to that, I would have taken it up with the union. So it's also a good time to like associate yourself with the unions so you could be protected if there's anything that doesn't feel right
mm-hmm,
from the
mm-hmm,
management point of view. So
mm-hmm,
so you can fight the battles together,
mm,
knowing when to say no and when to carry on. Yes, you are saving lives, but your life and the members of your family are also important. You also have a life to live. So while you're saving others, you
mm.
have to take care of yourself as well.
Okay. Thank you, Maureen. We'll come back to you, but I just thought maybe we'll jump over to maybe Jemimah, a maternity ward as a medical doctor. Maybe you could share a bit more with the rest of us about what your job looks like now with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe let us know how it's affected your your fate, your profession. Okay.
So yes, like you said, I work in maternity and I work with pregnant women and I work in women's health in general. So I think some of the first changes that happened was the gynecology side of things. So female health we had to stop. So planned operations. So things like keyhole surgery, for example, because you have to put people to sleep, and that is like an aerosol generating procedure. They've had to stop those kind of things because they're saying it's an increased risk to the people who are putting people to sleep, is an increased risk to the surgeon. So those things have had to be cancelled. For me, as a trainee doctor, that means that certain things I'm supposed to be getting skills in, I won't in this period. But also patients that have been waiting, like been on the waiting list for, fibroid operations or um, different things, just it will get delayed
Wow.
significantly. I mean, I think the only things that are really going ahead now are things that have to do with cancer because it's a timely sort of management. But apart from that, those things they've had to be cancelled. Um,
Okay.
so in that sense, we kind of have generated free time from that aspect of our work. However, pregnant women have babies that are not waiting for anybody. That babies have to be delivered.
Mm.
So it's that part has carried on and it's been busy from a pregnancy point of view, I'll tell you now. um, but I think what I've noticed or what's been different, particularly for my patients, is that um, they, like before you could, you have one or two people with you when you come to have your baby. People are you're allowed freely to come and visit you. All of that has been scrapped.
Mm.
When you everybody that's coming through the door, they're checking your temperatures, they're asking you where you've been, who you've been in contact with. You're only allowed one person literally for a while you're in labor, and then after that they have to go. So I guess women too are also anxious because it's like, oh, we're not getting the help and the support that we used to get. We
Mm.
also are anxious. We don't want to be in a COVID hospital having a
Yeah.
newborn baby that also has no immunity.
Oh.
Um, and yeah, women are bringing these worries and these anxieties to you amidst every other thing that you're having to deal with in their pregnancy whilst they're in hospital. So it's been very different. I think for me the biggest impact or change kind of came about when I think roughly 2 or 3 weeks ago now, one of the midwives that we worked with passed away. So she
Oh
had
dear.
been in hospital, ventilated for probably about 10 days. She had underlying medical problems. She's not really maintaining her own oxygen levels. And yeah, it was basically in the middle of one shift, like that was busy. And they kind of just brought the news to say, she's passed away. And just, I think for me, I didn't work with her so closely, so I didn't know her to that extent. But I think some of the other midwives had worked with her for well over 20 years. This is somebody they formed really close bonds. And I think to see the department just completely in pieces, people beside themselves, absolutely broken, absolutely shaken.
Yeah.
It makes a difference to how you listen to the news. It's not just, 200 people, 500 people. It's like, I have a face that I can put to this number now because I know this person. I worked with them last week. I was with them 2 weeks ago. And I think then it's almost as though the fear in the department spiked, because it's like, okay, we've been hearing about this virus. We know that there are people that are in our ICU across the way, which the ICU is literally opposite maternity. We're like the little bubble that's protected from everything else that's going in the hospital. So it's like, okay, yeah, this thing is real. This is somebody that's been very close to us, has worked with us, and I think that was one of the staff that we lost in the hospital. But I think what has been encouraging is that even in that time, people have still come together to support one another, to honor staff, to protect each other. We've had colleagues that have been positive but have recovered and have come back to work. But I think when you have a case like that, it shakes things. I think personally, like there's been times, because even people close to me as well, I've known people that have been like, somebody in my family has been unwell, or a relative's, parent or something has passed away, and you're almost tempted to think like, God, seriously? Like, what is going on? Why are things not adding up? We've prayed all the verses of Psalm 91, like, why is it still like this? But I think I'm encouraged. Like, even today I was reading, so the verse in John 16 where he says, I've said all these things to you that you may have peace, but still take heart, because in the world you will have trouble. And I'm like, how can you put peace and trouble side by side? Like, it's not adding up. It's still two different and very opposite things. But I think our peace in God is not kind of mutually exclusive from the trouble we face in the world. The fact that we have trouble does not mean that we can have peace in God. It has nothing to do with the quietness of our surroundings, but really very much to do with who it is that we are safely securing, who it is that we are trusting. Like Psalm 56 verse 3 says, when I'm afraid, I will trust in you. And I think I've had to kind of rest in the fact that regardless of how much is going on around me that I don't understand, I trust that whatever God's plans and purposes are in this time, through this time, like, it will work out. There will be something of that will make sense at some point, maybe not even in my lifetime, but he knows what he's doing. And if there's anybody that I can place my life in, to be honest, it's really not. Like, by all means, we should definitely obey all government policies and everything with PPE. But I think when you look at the PPE and you're like, this is plastic, this is cotton, this is, I'm like, if this is really what I'm putting my life in, it is not enough. And I think that realization hit me one day when, like, we're just like, we're running out, people in the COVID wards, they have they don't have enough. And I was just like, God, like, there has to be more that protects us than this piece of equipment. There has to be more. And I think that's where my trust lies.
Yeah. Wow. That's really encouraging, to feel safe and secure in his hands, irrespective of, like you said, the PPE to use to deliver your service. Wow. So we'll come back to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Let's move over to Njide. NJ. Some of you may already know this is like my immediate elder sister. I know we don't look alike, but she's my sis. So Njide, you work in psychiatry. And so I'm guessing your own field, face-to-face contact is important, being able to see your patients and speak with them directly. Just wondering how, with the COVID-19 situation, how that has impacted, how you're able to, function in your role. And maybe you could just share a bit about how the situation has affected your own faith as well.
I'm actually trying to think of where to start from. There are various angles to it. For me, um, I I work with presently the specialty I'm working with is perinatal mental health. So basically, ladies that are pregnant, planning to be pregnant, or have just had a baby up to 12 months of the baby's age.
Mm,
Um, so in a way, I think I can identify with Jemimah, you know,
mm,
and it's actually more complicated than just dealing with pregnant women because most of these ladies have mental health history, which are usually severe, and there are always social factors around. Their history of maybe drug addiction, domestic abuse, which is very common, young children, young parents with young children, all sorts you can think about, it's in the picture. So we always think about things like safeguarding, and you need to be sure, especially when you're dealing with children. So if a lady has a baby and she's had mental health history, which is quite severe, it's not enough to just speak to her over the phone. You need to pay her a visit at home for various reasons to see the home she's raising that child in, what's going on, who's in the house, um, dynamics in the house. There are just so many things you cannot tell over the phone, basically. So that's one aspect of the job. And my role is mainly community based. But what I have to end up doing is lots of home visits, lots of hospital visits, GP surgery visits, and once in a while I do cover the inpatient ward, but that's voluntary for me actually. I did insist on that, so in a way I'm a bit lucky. But I think what I keep thinking about is when this whole pandemic started and how there was this emphasis on PPE and testing and all of that, and the lag in time before they even considered my service.
mm,
So it was almost as if mental health was down the line, in terms of those that need the PPE,
mm,
because they're not really considered frontliners. They are frontliners, but they're not really considered frontliners.
mm,
But if you think about the fact that you don't know who is carrying this virus, you're meeting on people every day, you don't know who is carrying the virus. Um, for a long time until about, I would say just 3 weeks ago, we were just given complete PPE basically.
wow.
So at the end of the day, it was just God,
Yeah.
and it's still God, just protecting one.
Mm,
And I remember when the pandemic started, for some reason, I wasn't scared about this virus, and I guess to an extent, I'm not even scared. And I don't think it's about me. I think it's about whatever God has planned. There's like today I was having a conversation in my head, and I kept hearing from Him saying a higher purpose. There's something else to all of this happening that we're seeing that we can't see. We're only seeing what is evolving with the pandemic, basically. But there's something else going on in the background, and there's something he's working towards. When I thought about myself personally, I know for the most of last year, God was dealing with me basically about trusting him. And I know it's a simple thing, we say we trust God, we say we love God, but I think he was stripping off layers of the onion to show
yeah.
me, where my trust of his love for me is. Do I really believe that in the midst of all the difficulties I'm going through, that he loves me? Am I just saying it because it's something that makes me feel good? Or do I, in my heart, know that he's looking down on me and he's interested in that difficulty I'm going through? And I think that prepared me a bit for that. But having said that, where fear came in for me was around things like, oh, I have young children.
Mm,
What if I bring this back to them? You know, you're leaving for work, you're anxious, you've not done anything wrong, but you just have this almost like a guilt that, I'm going out there, exposing myself, coming back, I could infect my family. That was, a big thing for me. Second thing was, the fear, I think for me was the attitude of people to this virus. I feel the fear of the virus is even more dangerous than the virus. And I think
mm,
what was an eye opener for me was when I noticed the bulk buying and the, what do they call it, the rush buying people were doing and clearing out stores. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? It took me a while to even realize that, oh, I should be doing something because if for anything, I have little children in the house, so I should have something in the house, but it was scary, it was
mm,
scary for me, I was like, it's almost like these movies you watch about the end of the world and it's
mm,
evolving in front of you, but with it all, I feel God is still dealing with my fear. Maybe this is another level of the fear and trust he's dealing with. But it's interesting because when we read First John 4:18 that says that perfect love casts out fear, we don't really realize that that's what he's talking about. That perfect
mm,
love he has for us means that there should not be fear. No
mm,
matter how close to home this virus or the impact of the virus is for us, there should not be fear. And I know it's easier said than done, to be honest with you. Especially
mm,
when you see lots of people close to you, close to home, that are impacted by this virus. Um, but yeah, I think it's still a journey. I think some months from now, I'll probably be telling another version of this story, you know.
mm,
Um, but I also have to deal with the worries of my patients too, because you can imagine if for us that are relatively okay, we're having this kind of anxiety and worries. Imagine people that are already vulnerable to to worries, to getting paranoid, to being scared, or people that are
mm,
living in very difficult situations. That is another worry.
mm,
And I don't know about Maureen or Jemimah, but I know there's something about healthcare workers. We tend to want, we have this complex of being rescuers. We're always the
Mm-hmm.
ones that want to, you're saving people.
Yes.
And we struggle with saving ourselves. That's the problem. Um, but it's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves. And sometimes we don't realize that we can't always save people.
Yeah.
You know, we're not superhuman. We're still human. We still have the same impact. It still has the virus still has the same impact on us as it would have with anyone else. The only difference is that we still have to keep doing our jobs, and that was one thing God was talking to me about because I had to learn to start to take care of my even my mental health because
Yeah.
it's a lot of pressure. It is a lot of pressure, and it's still ongoing. But I also feel really privileged to do my little part, you know, no matter how little it is. I feel really privileged to. So basically, the way I work now, we've had to change to more of telephone and video consultations, but we still have to sort of prioritize higher risk patients and see them face to face. And what that means is that you're going to see someone in their home. You have for us the PPE we have to put on is the mask, the apron, the visor, and gloves. And these homes you're going to could be any size to being squashed. You can barely sit in some of them. Some are cluttered. There's just all sorts. And of course, you're meeting people that haven't met you before. So it's actually very a strange feeling, to be with all of this on, and you're trying to make eye contact with people that can't even see your face.
mm,
It's a strange way to walk, really. It is
mm,
strange. and then you do some video consultations, and you end it thinking, what was that? Because you can feel that there's something wrong going on in the background. Like I'm talking to
Wow.
someone that is very vulnerable, has a very lengthy mental health history, could be poorly at any time, basically. And
Mm.
she's with this new partner that has a bad, well, I don't want to say bad history, but quite a colorful history, let's put it that way. And I realized after a while that the phone was on speaker and she was getting her answers from him, and she was having
Wow.
conversation with him during that conversation. You understand?
Mm.
So where's the confidentiality? How are you safeguarding this patient? You could actually be putting the patient in trouble by what you're
Mm.
saying. So it's
Yeah.
very tricky. It's a tricky situation. So we've had to adapt somehow. And even when they say, okay, when eventually they decided that, so on the wards, initially on the inpatient wards, they said, okay, only test the patients that have a temperature or cough. And then the next stage was a few weeks after was, we'll test everybody. And then anybody that tests positive, you isolate them. How do you isolate patients of this category? How do you, I know, yes, we're fortunate to have a ward that has ensuite, rooms and all of that, but I mean, if someone that is not in their senses says they're not going to stay in the room, how are you going to keep them in the room
Yeah.
for a long period? There are just so many technicalities to it that can be avoided, And these are patients that on a good day will probably be spitting at you or throwing you punches or whatever. Not all of
Mm.
them, but some of them would,
Mm.
but it's tricky.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's all down to God. Just down to God
Wow.
protecting us, really.
Wow. You and Jemimah and Maureen, you guys are really strong women to be able to be resilient in the face of weekly realities of the COVID-19 either cases or the impact of the pandemic on your profession. I have a question for you, Njide. It says, how do you deal with patients that don't even understand what is going on at the moment? I'm guessing the person wants to know, how are you able to even explain what's happening to them?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big question, because the Mental Health Act in the United Kingdom is come a long way, and they've really done a good job in making sure patients have their rights and all of that protected.
Mm.
But at this stage, they're even modifying the act now, because sometimes you have to go against the patient's right. That's what it means, really. That's what it actually means now, because some patients just will not have the capacity to understand what you're saying.
Mm.
And then you might have to, maybe if you've tried verbal de-escalation, you might have to resort to some form of physical, restraining or confining,
Mm.
which is not ideal, especially in our setting. Is not, but that's just
Oh,
what we have to deal with now. There are
okay.
no laws to protect us, but there are lots of what's it called, ethical coverings that we're getting from the GMC and all sorts of bodies to say during this COVID period, doctors will be protected, and all of that. But I don't know if that's really the best thing, to be honest with you.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe for the three of you, and Jemimah, I think you touched on it a bit. I'm just wondering, what is the atmosphere in terms of your colleagues and maybe those that don't know God around you, and you can maybe almost sense the fear whilst you're working with people. How do you manage it?
I think it's really hard to manage, to be honest, because I think when like we really got into the beginning of the pandemic and it really hit the UK, like at work we usually have a WhatsApp group, so to be able to make changes, swaps with regards to your shifts and things like that, and just other things that you need people to do. But it was one of those things where at least people respected it was a weekend. We're not doing work talk. Like, let's just leave it. And then, as the COVID pandemic hit, it became every single day, every hour, every second, COVID updates, the panic. Like, it's just messages. You wake up and it's like 200 messages. I'm like, when? Why? What happened? Um, and I think it just kind of gets to the point where, like, for me at work, I like the atmosphere that I'm in makes a difference to how work goes. So I think what we've tried to do is try and still do things that are normal, try and still have conversations outside of COVID-19, try and steer things away from just the ongoing statistics. Because at the end of the day, like, people still, in as much as life is not as normal as we know it to be, like, there's still other things to life. Like, you still go home to your family, your children are still growing, like the trees outside are still growing. Like, you still have to do normal things.
Yeah.
So there's, and people they're discovering new talents, new hobbies, new ways of resting. Like the other day, one of my colleagues was just like, "Ah, where have you been? You've been very tan." She's just been like, "Oh no, just outside in my garden." I'm like, fine. Like, she's been enjoying the sunshine that God has blessed us with in this season. So I think it's just remembering that we can still, we have life, and we can still smile. There's still things to find joy in, despite everything that's going on. And we can't stop living in this season, regardless of how difficult it is, because what will happen is we'll come to the end of it and realize that we've lost out on life just because we paused. We stopped the clock, but then the clock of life doesn't stop. Yeah, so I think for me, it's still trying to find ways to do the normal things. Still, like, sometimes it'll be like, we'll Zoom call with the family, we'll cook together, have a meal. Like, I miss my family, they live 1 hour away, but still, like, not being able to go and like visit them is challenging. But then you can do whatever calls and still catch up with people, and just really being intentional about that. But I think I think just tying in with mental health, like, it's been important for me to sometimes switch off from the COVID talk, because it gets overwhelming. It really does. I'm not a news person, but I think I've really like tuned into the news more so this season. Then got to a point when I was like, okay, not twice a day, every day do I have to keep listening to the BBC. Like, I can listen to other things, because other things are, the other things to learn, the other things to listen to. Yeah, just tune into things that bring you life, not necessarily things that take your energy away.
That's true. That's true. I don't know if you want to add anything, Maureen or Njide.
Okay, so I think I'm fortunate that I work with a lovely team. I've rarely had any bad experience with anyone, but having said that, um, I realized that people are kind at this period. People are actually checking in on you. People are, showing genuine interest in how you're doing, how are your kids, where are they, who is with them now, how are you coping with, asking really genuine questions. And like in my team in particular, we set up this body system where you have someone you check in with at least once a week, one person that you sort of like catch up with. So there's a lot of focus on our well-being, trying to keep us, well. For me, I can only trust in God. That's the truth. Because, to be honest with you, He's the only person I am sure will not let me down. No matter how things turn out, He's one person that we are sure will work everything out for our good, like He promised.
Yeah, that's true.
So I hold on to God's word. I'm spending more time in the word than I usually would.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think it's helped me slow down. So, actually taking experiences, with the kids, whatever it is basically, and have those conversations, not just with them, also with God in my head, throughout the day.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed people are now and colleagues, they do seem less threatened by things like, let me pray for you, okay? Or you say some kind of blessing on them, or you try to encourage them, with something of God, I've
Mm.
not had any objection. Even
Yeah.
when I ask, they're like, by all means, of course, please. People are
Mm.
more willing to receive
Mm-hmm.
from God this season. That's what I have
Yeah.
noticed.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. That was one other question I was going to ask. If you found that in the work environment, people are now more open to, faith, to God, and what your experience has been. So you've kind of touched on that. Maureen, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, basically, like Njide said, people are more open to you saying a word of prayer for them, or are coming to you, ask some questions. Like I had somebody that came to me like, Maureen, I like to see you. Are we working together? I'm like, okay, what about? I thought because I'm a representative, maybe she wants to talk about PPE and some other health and safety stuff. But she was like, no, I think I need to draw close to God now. What do I do? I'm like, wow.
Mhm.
I said, what
Wow.
really
It's really good.
prompted you coming up with this question?
Mm.
And
Oh my.
I thought she was
That's
joking. She's
great.
like, no, I'm
That's
serious.
really
I'm
good.
serious.
Mm.
I'm really scared now. I'm really scared. So kind of open up the window for me to like, okay, sit down and talk to her and really calm her down that, you know what, all this will pass. It's a phase coming on. Most
Mm.
important thing that you have to give your life to Christ. And wherever
Wow.
you know you're falling from, just go back to that place and just receive the peace of God. Have peace.
Wow.
That is peace.
Amen.
God has
Amen.
given us peace.
Amen.
Those that
Mm-hmm.
surpasses every human understanding. And I was like, ordinarily, this lady will come to me, but because of
Mm.
COVID-19 and everybody's panicking and fear everywhere, she knew who to come to even talk to. So even though people are not saying anything, they kind of see you. They know who to talk to when there is crisis or problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really very, very encouraging to
Mm.
see that people can take notice of God in you and come to you for advice in
Mm.
these times of need and panic. So, and it's always like you can't give out something you don't have. So you've
Yeah.
got to have that peace yourself as well. So when
Yeah.
they
Mm.
experience you acting, behaving calm, calculated, and having the peace of God doing whatever you're doing,
Mm.
they admire that and they come to you for advice where you
Mm-hmm.
don't even expect that people will come to you.
Mm.
So it was really encouraging for me to see people coming to me for such kind of advice.
Mm.
So,
That's good.
and yeah,
That's
kind
good.
of like have a window of to kind of say preach the word of God, and
Mm.
also most
Mm.
importantly drawing their attention to Jesus. If they accept Jesus Christ, there's no need to fear, even if they go on.
Yeah.
COVID-19 happen to
Mm.
take
Yeah.
anybody, and he or she is happen to be one of them. She has nothing to fear because there is a life better than this one we are experiencing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we need to give our lives to God.
Yeah. So there's a sense that God has
It's a
divinely placed you ladies, even
yeah,
on the front line, in the midst of all the chaos, for a higher purpose. And isn't it wonderful that with all that is going on, um, the Lord is working behind the scenes, softening people's hearts and keeping them open to receive Him, even in a dark time. So we thank God for the three of you. Thank God for prepared you ladies and divinely placed you in your various spheres for a time like this. Um, there are two questions before I know we're coming to an end, but let me just take the first one. It's for you, Jemimah. So, what's the plan for the training you should have had? And also, are there any upsides to the COVID-19 situation that you've learned that you couldn't have learned if this didn't happen?
Um, I would say plan for training, to be honest, is still up in the air. I think like royal colleges and things, everybody's still trying to figure things out. Like I was supposed to do my exams in July, but they've postponed it to September. They're actually going to cancel it altogether, but I think they keep shifting things till they know what exactly is going to happen. The other thing they're doing is they're trying to keep us in the same place for longer. So normally we move around every year, which is around August time, but they might keep us till the end of the year, just so like we're all used to working in the COVID situation where we are. So rather than moving us to a new hospital, so if things change, we can kind of find our feet again before we move somewhere else. But they definitely take it into account, like it's across the nation. So I think there'll be plans to, when this is all over, try and give us extra training elsewhere. But for the time being, they've not really said. And then upsides to the COVID-19 situation, things that I would have learned. I would say like I don't think anybody could ever predict, I don't know, working in this kind of environment at all. Like it makes working that much more difficult. Yesterday I had to do an emergency section in 2 minutes with PPE. When you're like hot and you've got the visor and it's very misty and you're like, I'm trying to do this operation. Okay, God, I can see, but I cannot really see. I need to be quick because this baby needs out in like a minute. And it's you're working under pressure in a completely different sense. And I think it just teaches you that you can do it. And even if there wasn't COVID, if there was other pressures, like you can still do it and be safe. I mean, you rely on a good team, but definitely you can do it.
Amazing. And then the second question, I guess, is for the three of you. It says, how have you ladies been able to manage the fears and anxieties of your family members and loved ones at this time?
Absolutely important. To be honest with you, it's difficult. So one of the things that I do is manage information shared.
Okay.
So information that would be very alarming for, someone in the household, and it's not helpful, then there's no point sharing it. And I think more importantly, managing my own worries, because if I'm calm, then that will reflect on them. And it's just a situation we have no control over. And I think that even points out how much God is using it to teach us to trust Him. Because for me, every single day is a day of thanksgiving to God for life, for good health, not just for me, but for every member of my family, my loved ones, my friends. We just take it one day at a time. And I think that's part of the lesson, not being able to control and predict, how your day will even go, but just leaving it to God.
Definitely, I think managing that whole information sharing is important. But also, like, I think for me, sometimes when people have fears and anxieties, like even similar with my patients, so I think I like to just sit people down and listen, let you talk it out, get it off your chest, tell me what it is that you are worried about or what it is that is causing your fear exactly. Then I think it's almost like reframing that, putting it in the right perspective, because sometimes you've either built a really big problem out of either fake news or something that is really, really unlikely to happen. I know that at the moment there's so much uncertainty, but you have to kind of almost think about it that, to be honest, life is full of uncertainties. Like that is life in general. But yeah, I think it's just listening to them and then trying to be like, okay, this is the truth about this thing. This is how, or this is, what the word says about this thing. And trying to then turn that into prayer, because I think sometimes as well, when people that are close to you are throwing all their fears and anxieties, it's easy to also carry that and it becomes your own fear and anxiety. And then I think as soon as for me that happens, I need to just say, okay, God, I've heard this person, this is things they're worried about. I've tried to encourage them in this way, but I don't want to then carry it and then become anxious. Like, so I'm going to give it to you because you are the person that can deal with it. So yeah, I went and trying to just pray with them or pray for them, or a combination of both.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing, Njide, Jemimah, and Maureen had to shoot off for work because she's working this evening. So yeah, it's been really, really a rich conversation that we've had. I feel like I've been strengthened, encouraged in my own faith, even though I know I'm not living the same reality that you ladies have to leave weekly at work. And I just pray that God will continue to strengthen you, in your physical bodies and also in your faith, in your spirit, soul, body, that He would keep you all as you continue to serve people in the health service. So thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your stories. So yeah, thank you all so much, and God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day.